After my last couple videos on Austin Whitsitt's word salad, the flat earthers have gone insane attacking me. I really must have struck a nerve. But strangely, they never even tried to have evidence for their precious dirt pizza. If there was any evidence for flat earth, they would be posting it. This is how they admit that flat earth is a lie. So what better way to expose their failure than to do it again? When Whitsitt was on InfoWars with Harrison Smith, the topic of how planets orbit came up.
How do you explain these paths and this motion without, a force acting on the planets other than gravity? I mean, how do you have a planet going towards and away from us if they're circling around us?
Well, there is a force. Automatically, there's some type of force, right? Because everything's moving around.
Austin agrees there's a force. I bet he's about to explain how this force makes planets orbit over flat Earth in that spirograph pattern.
There's some type of force, right? Because everything's moving around. If you look at a Ferrocell image of a magnetic field,
who is surprised that he deflected away from explaining how this force works.
So it's just a creative invention that was made. You use two little pieces of glass, you put ferro fluid and another fluid inside of it, line it with LED lights, and you can see the magnetic field.
Right.
It makes that exact same pattern. It's a torus field, sacred geometry, the golden ratio. That torus field, every one of those planets pass fit perfectly within a torus field. And of course, the heliocentric side's explanation for this is it's just a coincidence, which is pretty ridiculous.
The ridiculous thing is that the magnetic field Austin shows does not make the same spirograph patterns as the planets. It's just a series of circles offset from each other. Not a single one of the planet's paths matches even remotely. So here's the question to ponder. Is Austin so oblivious that he doesn't realize that these don't even remotely match? Or does Austin know they don't match, but he's confident that his staggeringly gullible followers won't even notice?
Well, because we see the same geometry everywhere.
But how can it match perfectly when each planet is a different path? I mean, they can't all match perfectly because they don't match each other.
Yeah, but within a torus field, there are multiple different paths, right? So if you look at a Ferrocell image, and I could maybe pull it up, but if you look at a magnetic field, you're going to see that all of those patterns are in there individually. And basically, each one of these quote unquote planets are taking their own path within this torus field. They all fit within it perfectly.
If by perfectly you mean not at all. And what kind of child's mind would think that just because things look similar, they are the same? With that kind of juvenile thinking, would anyone be surprised if Whitsitt tried to have a deep and meaningful conversation with this tree or these peppers? And then Austin could ride off in his mighty steed, the cloud horse. That's what it looks like, so according to Whitsitt, that's what it is. Well, now that Austin has set the foundation that in his fantasy world, things look alike, therefore they are the same, and also that the spirograph planet paths and the magnetic field lines do not actually look alike, let's hear about the force that causes these paths.
I will actually say you can use a Lorentz magnetic force to not get too technical, but it's pretty funny that you can show what's called a dynamic equivalence, meaning the way that the force makes objects move around each other from a geocentric universe, and it's a magnetic Lorentzian force. And what a coincidence, the patterns of the planets fit perfectly within a magnetic field's geometry. So it's more elegant, actually.
Austin packed a lot of salad into that collection of words. There's at least three big assumptions here. First, he claims that the Lorentz magnetic force causes these spirograph patterns, but he doesn't want to get too technical.
To not get too technical.
Austin never gets technical. The limit of his ability is to find some technical term and just say it.
Magnetic Lorentzian force.
But did he show how this force causes the planets to move in that pattern? Maybe he did that on his own channel. Of course not. Whitsitt's tactic in debates is to name drop some term that his opponent has not heard of. This term doesn't support the claim, but it doesn't matter to flat earthers. They imagine that the earth becomes flat if a globe proponent didn't have that term fully understood and was ready to respond to it. This tactic only works for a short time because intelligent people look up the term and discover it has no application to his claim. But don't worry, Mr. Salad Shooter will make up a new term as soon as the old term is shown to be useless. The Lorentz force applies to charged particles in both an electric field and a magnetic field. Coulomb's law determines the force from the electric field, and a similar equation determines the force from the magnetic field. You add these together and get the Lorentz force. This is a highly simplified explanation. Determining the complete force is much more complicated because the moving charges themselves generate a magnetic force.
What a coincidence the patterns of the planets fit perfectly within a magnetic field's geometry.
Whitsitt only talks about the magnetic field, then brings up the Lorentz force, showing that he has no clue about the topic. To substantiate his claim, Whitsitt will need to determine both the electric and magnetic field that he thinks the planets move through, the charge of the planets themselves, and then how these very specific patterns would happen. Now, assumption number 2 is that Whitsitt is glossing over these patterns are from the geocentric globe model, not flat Earth. The geocentric globe model claims that the globe Earth is in the middle of the solar system and the sun orbits the Earth 150 million kilometers away. The spirograph patterns of the planets from this geometry are also millions of kilometers away, not small and local like the flat Earth mythology says. Yet he still claims the planet paths are due to the Lorentz force. This is a solar system-sized electric and magnetic field. So sharpen your pencil, Salad Boy, you've got a lot of work to do. But that's not it. Now we get to the biggest assumption yet. How do these planet paths relate to his claim of flat Earth? Well, he just tosses together a quick salad and says, dynamic equivalence. That'll fool the gullible.
It's pretty funny that you can show what's called a dynamic equivalence, meaning the way that the force makes objects move around each other, from a geocentric universe.
It's pretty funny that dynamic equivalence does not mean that you take a 3D geocentric globe solar system and all the forces that don't actually work and change to a small 2D system with different geometry. The dynamics are not equivalent. Forces change, masses change, field strengths change. Nothing about the dynamics is the same. It's also pretty funny that Whitsitt just tosses that out there, and none of his faithful acolytes presses him to show how these are dynamically equivalent. Whitsitt is just trying to say the word projection when he means projection. He is suggesting that you take the geocentric globe solar system and project it to a tiny little flat Earth. But when you do that, the paths of the planets get modified too. And the distances. This would completely change all the work Whitsitt will never be doing on the Lorentz force. What are the paths of the planets over flat Earth? Nobody knows. There are no flat Earth astronomers measuring the positions of celestial bodies and charting them in the Tupperware lid of the Terra Tortilla. How can Whitsitt pretend that he applied the Lorentz force to the planet's paths if they haven't even been charted over the dirt pizza? Who would have known that his quick statement had so many wild assumptions in it?
If we use like Occam's razor, that which requires the least amount of assumptions is most likely to be true.
Maybe you should start taking your own advice there, Assumption Boy. Your entire worldview is nothing but assumptions without any empirical evidence. So did you find that triple-decker nothing sandwich with extra word salad filling? Do you need a little dressing on the side? I'm still working on the next installment testing Whitsitt's gravity replacement, so keep looking for that. Austin also tried to explain the orbit of the ISS and other satellites over Frisbeeland. Subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can apply a Lorentzian magnetic force to have that video played when it comes out.